Okay, good evening. Please take your seat. Can I have some quiet, please? I now declare the February Council meeting open at 6:30 p.m. and welcome all of those in attendance. I now invite Councillor Edinger to read the acknowledgement to country.
The City of Melville acknowledges the Bibbulmun people as the traditional owners of the land on which the city stands today and pays its respects to the Whadjuk people and elders, both past and present.
Thank you. I also would like to invite Councillor Edinger to say a few words in commemoration. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This evening I'm honoured to present this tribute to Mike Nichol. Firstly, I would like to thank Ken Booth for his generous assistance with the content of this speech. Recently, Mike Nichol passed away. As I presented this evening's acknowledgement of country, I should have spoken a word that had been suggested by Mike. Last year he wrote to myself, Councillor Barber and Councillor Spanbrook, putting forward an argument that the word owners in the acknowledgement be replaced with custodians. Whilst I have not actively pursued Mike's suggestion with the city, I have personally tried to incorporate the word custodians into my acknowledgements of country, and it is an apt word to use when remembering Mike. Mike was a committed, active and engaged member of the Melville community, and at this year's Australia Day ceremony posthumously received the City of Melville's 2025 Senior Citizen of the Year Award. He had learnt before he recently passed away that he had received this well-deserved honour. The Nichol family attended the council ceremony on Australia Day to accept the award in his name. The citation for the award reads, and I quote, "For more than 40 years, Mike was a chair of Friends of Adderdale Foreshore, protecting and maintaining the natural environment through foreshore plantings, reticulation, extensive fencing, including the marine park, and vegetation areas listed as Priority 1 by the Swan River Trust, including Alfred Cove. The Friends of Adderdale Foreshore was incorporated in 2001 and Mike was a foundation member and elected chair since October 2011. He made significant joint public submissions and numerous other submissions in relation to the conservation of the Adderdale Foreshore. More recently, for example, a joint public response to the draft Adderdale Alfred Cove Foreshore Master Plan in December 2021. Mike was one of the city's great treasures and will be missed by many. Let our thoughts be with his family at this sad time," end quote. In 1963, Mike and Margaret married, and in 1964 they bought a block in Stoneham Road, Adderdale. He once told me that people thought they were mad buying an Adderdale on the southern side of the river. His wife was from Floreat, so north of the river. He and Margaret had 3 daughters, Annette, Jenny and Jackie. My connection with Mike began not long after the move to Stoneham Road. I attended kindergarten, primary and high school with his eldest daughter Annette, and so was fortunate to attend many Nichol birthday parties and other events. Mike's life of community service included membership of Fremantle Apex Club and lengthy involvement with Fremantle Rotary Club, during which time he received the Paul Harris Fellowship Award on 2 occasions. A great honour. The Nichol family has long been involved in the life of St Christopher's Anglican Church in Bicton, and Mike was a great supporter of the music hall, the bazaars and other fundraisers over the years, providing electrical support. And he would always greet me with a cheery hello if I saw him at any of those events. As evidenced by his award citation, Mike was passionate about the restoration of the Adderdale Foreshore, which has, and to this day continues to be, affected after being used as a tip for many years. He and Margaret spent countless hours planting, watering and weeding newly planted vegetation. In recent years, Mike was actively involved in the campaign, against, Mr Tonkin doesn't like this obviously. In recent years, Mike was actively involved in the campaign against the proposed wave park and supported the subsequent creation of the Melville Bird Sanctuary. He was known, and I'm not condoning this behaviour, to climb over the fence with the aid of a ladder to check on the ospreys and their chicks. The week before he passed away, he called Melville Bird Sanctuary's leading lady, Jenny Christensen, to check up on the ospreys' well-being and she was able to assure him that the current chick and parents were flourishing. As a community, we are fortunate to have had Mike in our midst, to care for our environment, to support community endeavours, and to leave us with a legacy of custodianship through the regenerative foreshore and Adelaide Bush Reserve, which we can all appreciate and enjoy. His was a life well lived. Vale, Mike Nicol.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edinger. Now I draw your attention to the disclaimer on the screen. The affirmation of civic duty and responsibility on the screen. The advice of audio-visual live streaming and recording on the screen. And I wish to advise the public gallery that if you plan on asking a question during public question time and you haven't submitted the question to us in writing in advance, you'll need to complete a public question time form. These can be found on the table at the front on your left in the public gallery. The form needs to be handed to a member of the governance prior to you asking your question. Item 2, attendance and apologies. We have the following councillors attending electronically with my permission. Can you please confirm your attendance? Councillor Barber. Oh, I think we have a sound problem. Okay, we'll wait for that to be corrected. Councillor Spanbrook. The speakers are muted. Is that from our side?
Hear me? No, still can't hear me. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook.
Oh, thank you.
So there are no councillors on leave of absence for this evening or submitting an apology. So we now move on to declarations by members. Declarations by members who have not read and given due consideration to all matters contained in the business papers presented before the meeting. Declarations by members who have received and not read the elected members' bulletin. It's nil as well. Announcements by the presiding member. Now we have one deputation that has been approved for tonight's meeting from Mr Hare of Applecross in relation to item UP 2559, Local Planning Scheme 6, petition responses. I will call you forward to prior to the discussion of this item to make your deputation to council. There are no written submissions for this evening. Number 5, disclosures of interest. Can the Head of Governance please advise if there are any disclosures of interest for this evening?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. Our first disclosure of interest is from the CEO, Ms Bowman, in relation to item UP 2559, Local Planning Scheme number 6, Review of Petition Responses. Ms Bowman is declaring an impartiality interest. The second disclosure is from Councillor Robbins in relation to item CD 2540, Financial Advocacy Priorities for the Advocacy Strategy 25 to 2029. Councillor Robbins is declaring an impartiality interest. Our third disclosure is from Councillor Wheatland, again in relation to item CD 2540, Financial Advocacy Priorities for the Advocacy Strategy 2025 to 2029. Councillor Wheatland is also declaring an impartiality interest. I have one further declaration from Councillor Barber in relation to petition item 12.1, Receipt of Petition Traffic Calming Strategies, Burke Drive. Councillor Barber is also declaring an impartiality interest. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any further disclosures from elected members? Okay, if there are none, I'll move on to public question time. Now, I advise that 15 minutes is allocated for public question time. Each questioner will have 2 minutes to ask their question and any follow-up question. So please be respectful and do not use offensive or derogatory language or make false and misleading statements while speaking, or I will ask you to return to your seat. So I now open public question time at 6:40 p.m. Now, questions received in writing prior to the meeting. There has been a number of questions that have been received with notice this evening. If we have the questioner asker here in the meeting or have a representative to ask the question, could you please make your way to the microphone when you're called? So if there's no one in the audience to ask the question and the question is not taken on notice, the question and response will be provided in the minutes, which will be available to the public on Friday, 21st of February. So the first person I'll call upon is Mr. Wheeland of Bicton. It doesn't appear that he is here. So moving on to Ms. Horn of Ardross.
Your Worship, councillors, admin staff and fellow residents. I will start with saying, according to Infrastructure Australia 2020 Hatch 23 report commissioned by the City of Melville, Canning Highway between Canning Bridge and Risley Street will exceed capacity by 2031, based on growth through the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan and the Risley Activity Centre, with 185 out of 300 housing units remaining to be built at the Risley Activity Centre. Councillor Green asked last week whether the LPS 6 densification had been included. It would seem that it has not, and the projection for overcapacity by 2031 includes the Canning Bridge Activity Centre and the Risley Activity Centre, 185 units of housing only, and not LPS 6, where community engagement occurred in April 23 and was finalised in June 24. A decision was made by councillors in September 24 of the Canning Highway corridor as the target, without apparent impact statements or predictive modelling. My question, please advise the number of residential units, both from high-rise and the density increase from R20 to R40, excluding the Risley Activity Centre and the Canning Bridge Activity Centre, that LPS 6 will add to the Canning Highway corridor for all suburbs that require Canning Highway as a transport link. Thank you.
I'll ask the Director of Planning, Mr. Varelis, to respond.
Thank you for your question, Ms. Horn, through the Chair. For the City to undertake a modelling exercise to understand the impact, we would need a better understanding of the area in question. Canning Highway is a significant corridor, and that would assist with providing a specific response. So we'll be happy to engage with you to understand the exact area in question and undertake a review of that potential modelling. Notwithstanding, further investigation into dwelling modelling and its related traffic impacts is planned as part of LPS 6 review process. These proposals will also be reviewed by state transport agencies such as Main Roads WA and the Department of Transport.
Thank you, Mr. Varelis. We're moving on to Mr. Price of Ardross.
Hi all, thank you for taking my question. Sorry, I've got an amended question that I was sent from the council. Okay. The City of Melville was aware that Canning Highway would reach overcapacity before the LPS 6 planning process. Residents have serious concerns about livability, traffic, and the unsolvable problem of overcapacity on Canning Highway. The Hatch Review Canning Highway Duck and Dive Movement in Place 2023 recommended investigating road performance and infrastructure upgrades for Leach Highway and South Street to alleviate the pressure on Canning Highway. If the more expensive land along the congested Canning Highway had not been made available to developers, and the Leach Highway and South Street corridors had been preferred, developers might have had to find more economical ways to build. Why is the City of Melville exacerbating the serious problem of congestion on Canning Highway at the expense of the good planning we expect from the council? I'm sorry that was a bit disjointed, but I had to delete some of the comments that were made. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call upon the Director of Planning, Mr Varelis, to please respond.
Thank you for your question, Mr Price, and through the Chair. The review of Local Planning Scheme number 6 has identified several locations across the city for increased development potential. These areas align with the state government planning strategies and the city's local planning strategy. Preliminary proposals to include land along Canning Highway were advertised for community feedback. These sites were selected based on a variety of factors, including access to public transport, developability, and proximity to major centres. The impact of these proposals on both local and regional traffic congestion will be a key consideration in the ongoing evaluation of their viability. The issues that have been raised by the community are real issues, and they will be considered by the city and its officers, and ultimately the council in making a determination on a plan satisfactory for statutory advertising. Further investigations into these traffic impacts, along with assessments by state government agencies, including Main Roads and the Department of Transport, will guide future decision-making by council on these proposals.
Thank you, Mr Varelis. Mr Costa of Burragoon.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, CEO, councillors, planning staff, neighbours and ratepayers. Tree canopy question. Following a failure of the City of Melville to deliver dwelling targets under Regulation 67 of the Planning and Development Local Planning Scheme, Regulations 2015, within the allocated 5-year time frame, WAPC considered the City of Melville's own recommendations to review the LPS 6 planning scheme as a method to remedy the shortfall in residential development. On December 23, 2021, the City was advised it should prioritise the review of the density code allocations across the scheme area where justified by the City's local planning strategy, the outstanding structure plans, and investigate and pursue possible development incentives to encourage more residential development. In relation to this matter, can the City please explain for the period 2015 to 2021 how this directive has impacted the City's performance against its required tree canopy levels? What was the level of tree canopy cover by the individual postcode footprints across the City of Melville in 2015? What was the tree canopy by individual postcodes across the City of Melville at the end of 2021? What green canopy incentives were provided to which developers over the course of this period to limit tree canopy reduction? What incentives were provided to ratepayers over the course of this period to limit green canopy reduction? The current LPS 6 proposed rezoning adds an additional opportunity for significant tree canopy reduction. Based on the past reduction by postcode, what is the projected additional loss of tree canopy by postcode, and what alterations have been made to the initiative provided to both developers and ratepayers to slow the current rate of reduction of tree canopy? Thank you.
Thank you. I will call upon Ms Bowman, the CEO, to answer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your questions. In accordance with Section 6.9C of the City of Melville Local Government Meeting Procedures Local Law 2022, these questions will need to be taken on notice and a response provided in the agenda of the March Council meeting. So thank you for your questions, and we will provide an answer in the next Council meeting agenda. Thank you.
Ms Gordon of Burragoon.
Your Worship, the CEO, councillors, officers and members in the gallery here. The preamble has been lodged and I've been advised that my questions are going to be taken on notice as well, so I'll just get straight to the question. In relation to the shortfall of dwellings created between 2015 and 2021, what has the City of Melville learned using the three levers: density allocation, modifications to structure plans and developer incentives? And what is the projected improvement in uptake in the new residential dwellings in the currently targeted localised proposed LPS 6 zoning? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms Bowman, CEO, is to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your questions. As you've said, we will need to take those questions on notice and the response will be provided in the March Council meetings agenda, so thank you.
Mr Bochi of Burgoon. Moving on to Ms Thompson of Burgoon.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, councillors and City of Melville officers. According to the local housing strategy, 900 new dwellings are anticipated for the Burgoon Secondary Centre. I have a three-part question for this. Firstly, how many new dwellings have been built in this area to date? B, when selecting the areas to be rezoned as part of the LPS 6, what were the projected target of new dwellings expected to be achieved in the Burgoon and Ardross area? How are these zoning changes expected to contribute to the infill target? Please provide a quantitative number. And lastly, the City of Melville has previously stated that they have currently achieved 50% of their target of 11,000 new dwellings by 2031. One reason given for being at 50% is slow uptake of subdivision. After the negative public feedback from the proposed LPS 6 rezoning, do you still believe that the Burgoon and Ardross areas will significantly contribute towards reaching the infill goal in the Burgoon Secondary Centre?
Thank you. I'll now call upon the CEO, Ms Bowman, to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your questions. Those questions will need to be taken on notice and the responses provided in the March Council meeting agenda. Thank you.
Next questioner, Ms Field of Burgoon. Can you use the microphone, please?
Hello, I'm also concerned about the significant or potential significant loss of our green canopy and our green corridors. As you know, Singapore does high-density housing very well, and I'm not sure why the City of Council aren't modelling some of their planning based on countries like Singapore. Significant green coverage and corridors, as you know, soften the look of buildings, insulate against urban noise, provide important habitat for our native wildlife, reduce temperatures and improve air quality. Although harder to implement, why don't we consider little infill and more well-designed, bigger, higher density housing that incorporates, like Singapore, significant green coverage and use the green building practices?
Thank you. I'll ask the CEO, Ms Bowman, to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your questions. We'll need to take those questions on notice and a response will be provided in the agenda of the March Council meeting, so thank you.
That ends the questions on notice. If there is anybody else who would like to ask a question, you can proceed to the microphone. Hopefully you will have filled in a form by now. Are there any further questions from the gallery? If there's no further questions, I now declare the question time closed at 6:54 p.m. All right, on to awards and presentations. There are no awards or presentations for this evening. Applications for new leave of absence. One request for leave of absence has been received from Councillor Barber for 1 week in March. Are there any further requests from the floor? Okay, no further elected member requests. Can I please have a mover and seconder for the motion to approve the request, the leave of absence? Thank you, Councillor Hong. Seconded, Councillor Woodall. Any voice to the contrary? I declare it carried. Moving on to confirmation of minutes, 9.1, ordinary meeting of the Council, 10th of December. Mover and seconder, please, for the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Whitland. Seconded. Councillor Green, any voice to the contrary? I declare it carried. Now, the annual meeting of electors, 3rd of February. Could I please have a mover and seconder for the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Robbins. Seconded. Councillor Edinger, any voice to the contrary? I declare it carried. Moving on to 9.3, ordinary meeting of the Governance Committee, 10th of February. Can I please have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Edinger moved, seconded Councillor Hong. Any voice to the contrary? I declare it carried. And 9.4, notes of the agenda briefing forum, 11th of February. Can I have a mover and seconder of the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Robbins. Seconded Councillor Lee. Any voice to the contrary? I declare it carried. Moving on to item 10, new business of an urgent nature. There is no new business of an urgent nature. 11, identification of matters for which meeting may be closed. The following items have been identified as confidential. E2560, confidential. Purchase of electricity for City of Melville contestable sites. And C25-242, confidential staffing matter. I will hold these items to the end of the meeting so we can move to go behind closed doors. Petition. Item 12. A petition signed by 64 residents was received by the City on Thursday, the 6th of February, in relation to traffic calming strategies on Burke Drive. So 12.1, receipt of petition, traffic calming strategies, Burke Drive. I need a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover? Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded. Councillor Whitland, any voice to the contrary? I declare that carried. Moving on to item 13, adoption of recommendations en bloc. So item C25-233, investment statements for November 2024. C25-234, investment statements for December. C25-235, schedule of accounts paid for November. C25-236, schedule of accounts paid for December. C25-237, statements of financial activity for November. C25-239, common seal, February. C25-240, variation of previous item concerning sale of properties under the LGA for unpaid rates. Can I have a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Whitland.
Apologies, Madam Mayor. If I might just ask, I was listening to the list of numbers you read out, but I couldn't tell whether the budget variance item was also included in those. So the statement of budget variation, is that also being moved en bloc?
No, is the mid-year budget review?
Yeah.
Yes, no, it's not.
Okay,
It's not part of this. It's a separate item. So we have a mover, Councillor Whitland. We need a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Any voice to the contrary? I declare it carried. Item 14, reports. We now move on to items for this evening. And I will bring forward item UP 2559, Local Planning Scheme 6, review of petition responses, as we have a deputation on this item. We had a number of deputations at the agenda briefing forum, and it is not our usual practice to have further deputations, so I'll ask the Head of Governance to advise the meeting why we have deviated from this instance. Thank you, Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, Mr Hare was inadvertently given the incorrect date for the agenda briefing forum held last Tuesday evening, and the Mayor has used her discretion in allowing Mr Hare to have his deputation heard tonight. Thank you.
So I'd like to invite Mr Hare forward to make his deputation. Please make your way to the microphone and turn it on. You have 10 minutes to speak and 5 minutes for elected members to ask questions.
Good evening, Your Worship, and thank you for accepting the request for deputation at this Ordinary Council meeting. Good evening also to the elected members, the staff and my fellow residents. My name is Tom Hare and I present this deputation on behalf of the signatories to the LPS 6 review petition number 1 regarding the area along Canning Highway between Cowan Street and Cunningham Street. There are 184 signatories to the petition. The vast majority of the signatories are from the immediate area. Of those surveyed, we only recorded one resident who declined to sign due to having recently sold his house. If you plotted the addresses on a map, it would illustrate almost universal opposition to the proposed zoning change within the immediate area. Please advance the slide. The full petition text is included here, but I wish to expound upon a subset of the points in this deputation. Some of the items will not be covered, so these will not be presented in numeric sequence. Please advance. Reason number 1, the petition text reads, quote, "The area between Wireless Hill and Tompkins Park is a narrow wedge of housing. The rezoning disproportionately rids the area of house and land properties compared with other stretches along Canning Highway, having an outsized impact on amenity of these quiet, low-density streets. By example, the number of dwellings accessed via Lillian Avenue alone could increase from approximately 40 to hundreds, due to the requirement to provide access to Canning Highway R60 properties via Lillian Avenue. This causes traffic and parking congestion to local streets and compounds the already problematic congestion on Canning Highway," end quote. The current traffic situation heading east on Canning Highway during peak hour in the morning results in traffic backing up at a standstill from Canning Bridge as far back as Cunningham Street. This is without yet seeing the full impact of the completion and inhabitation of the new apartment buildings in the Canning Bridge precinct. This increase needs to play out, and modelling of the additional proposed rezoning changes needs to be completed and made available for public consultation before any further rezoning is considered. The Canning Bridge precinct has already borne a disproportionate increase in density compared with the rest of the city, with Canning Highway less equipped than other arterial roads to cater for any further increase. Please advance. Reason 2 in the petition, the text reads, "The increase in impervious built area will result in unmanageable stormwater runoff due to the water table at 0.7 metres below surface, uniquely high even for riverside areas, and engineering limitations. This compounds the very high flash flooding risk predicted for 6.5% of Applecross properties, many of which are located in this immediate area by 2050, end quote. On screen, you will see 2 typical R60 properties side by side in Mount Pleasant. Each of these properties has approximately 95% impervious area, that is paving or roof area. Impervious area creates water runoff, with regulations stating this runoff needs to be captured on the property. City of Melville soak-well volume calculator for each of these properties results in a required soak-well volume of 15 to 20 cubic metres. It is important to note that in Lillian Avenue, the water table reaches up to 0.7 metres below the soil surface in winter. Note also the City of Melville requirement that soak-well bottoms be at least 0.5 metres above the highest water table level to allow adequate drainage, an impossibility given the water level. Lastly, for these developments, the only place to locate any significant stormwater storage is beneath the paved driveways. The area of the driveways, the volume of storage required and the depth limitation posed by the water table make this a physical impossibility. The flash flooding risk that this contributes to is a strategic threat to any future increase in density in this immediate area and needs investigation before rezoning occurs. It warrants not to be treated in a piecemeal fashion with each development application. Please advance the slide. Reason 4 in the petition text states, The presence of acid sulphate soils in this area, in being disturbed by excavation and dewatering, can result in the release of extensive contamination, which significantly degrades surface and groundwater, impacting aquatic life and increasing corrosion of subsurface infrastructure and residential structures, end quote. The City, in its response to this petition item, has stated that acid sulphate soil risk will be managed via soil reports which occur with standalone builds. This poses a high risk given there is no effective compliance enforcement at this stage of development. Developers will be fully invested in having purchased land and in pressing on with the development in spite of unfavourable soils and will not need to live with any long-term implications. Please advance the slide. Item 6 relates to future flooding risk. Relates to future climate risk regarding both flood risk and bushfire risk. Firstly, flood risk is a complex threat arising from riverine flooding, coastal inundation and flash flooding. Melville's Climate Vulnerabilities, Risk and Opportunities report goes some way to consider these. Please advance. Taking this excerpt from the report on screen. These are risks that are identified in the report. Increased risk of sea level rise impacting transport infrastructure, changes to land uses exacerbating climate change effects such as the effects of flooding, and flood damage to electrical infrastructure. End quote. Case in point, a power outage in Lillian Avenue in the Q4 2024, which was caused by an underground electrical cable splice having failed due to being submerged in the high water table following heavy rain. Please advance. I refer now to the Insurance Council of Australia's report, Flooding and Future Risks. This report notes the following insights relevant to flood risk in this area. Issue 1. Land use planning settings and associated building controls do not eliminate flood risk to modern properties, leading to significant residual risk and impacts for communities to manage. Issue 2. The current building code does not consider building resilience to flood risk. Please advance. The image on the right shows the 1 in 100 flood hazard area, with water reaching Dunkley Road and coming up Francis Street. The report notes, quote, currently, standards require that new housing not be located within the 1 in 100 AEP flood hazard area. Reliance on the 1% flood standard has historically assumed that residual risk from larger events will be infrequent and minor enough to be generally acceptable to communities. However, this analysis of flood claims data suggests that contemporary homes be built above 1% flood level are sustaining an unacceptable level of damage, end quote. This implies properties beyond the green line are impacted, and I can assure you that there is very little elevation change between the green line and properties flagged for rezoning along Canning Highway. Further quote, as the climate continues to change, existing flood zones are likely to expand and expose more property assets, as well as increasing the depth of floodwater in currently exposed properties, end quote. I add my own emphasis to the last part of this quote, which is particularly relevant. Quote, flood risk can be managed in a range of ways with the greatest opportunities related to land use planning, end quote. Here we are talking about increasing the number of dwellings in a high-risk flood area, an example of land use planning directly increasing flood risk exposure. Advanced slide. Here we see a snapshot from the Climate Council's flood risk map, which is also cited in Melville's climate report. Over 27% of Applecross properties are deemed very high flood risk by 2030. This does not factor in future compounding of this risk due to climate change, increasing sea levels and extreme weather events. Looking at a digital elevation model of the area, a large number of these 20% of properties are located in the area between Cowan and Cunningham Streets. Increasing the number of dwellings in an area which is considered to be flood prone in the near future does not bode well for the city's own climate resilience goals. Advanced slide. In terms of bushfire risk, Wireless Hill and surrounds are designated a high-risk bushfire area. The map on screen shows that many houses in the Cowan to Cunningham Street area are affected. Again, increasing the number of dwellings in a high-risk bushfire area goes against climate resilient planning principles and increases risk to residents. Please advance. This increase in flood and bushfire risk exposure as a direct result of planning decisions within this council's control raises the spectre of insurability. Increasing the number of dwellings in this risk-exposed area creates a future insurability problem for residents, the City of Melville as an administrative body, and for broader society. Per the City of Melville's climate report and the quote on the screen, in the context of flood insurance within the city, 2,286 properties are at high risk of insurance becoming unaffordable or unavailable by 2100. Lastly, the report excerpt at the bottom of the slide notes that insurance affordability will be a problem for low and middle income earners. In summary, planning decisions and land use is single-handedly the biggest lever that council operates in regards to managing future risk, be it the impact of excessive traffic to the livability of an area or the risk posed by climate events and fires. We simply ask that the council duly consider these risks and the points raised in this petition with adequate input from independent experts. Thank you.
Elected members have 5 minutes to question Mr Hare. Are there any questions from elected members? Councillor Lee, what is your question? Please keep it to 2 minutes and the response to 2 minutes.
Thank you for your well-researched, thank you, Madam Mayor, well-researched on the flooding. When you were doing the statistics, did you come across the Great Flood in 1974? And it's a 1 in 100 year flood. So it's predictable that it will come back again, which is going to be even greater. So if you look up the facts, there was a Great Flood, 1974, and they flooded the whole of Applecross. So I thought that would be good.
Thanks for the information.
Okay, are there any other questions from elected members? Okay, if there's no further questions, thank you very much, Mr Hare, for your presentation. And are you quite happy to be contacted by councillors about this information? Yes. You are, thank you. All right, now we're moving on to the officer's recommendation. We need a mover and seconder. Councillor Edinger, seconder Councillor Lim. Is there any discussion on this? I'll ask Councillor Ross. A deferral motion. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Lee. Yes, you have a couple of minutes to explain why. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Just can you let us know when it will be deferred to? We need a date.
The deferral is to the May 2025 ordinary meeting of Council. The reason is, one, the deferral does not delay the current activities or progress of the review, as these proposed motions are in any event deferring matters to December 2025. Two, the City has arranged for elected members to receive a full briefing on next Tuesday, February 25, on matters concerning LPS 6 and issues raised in these petitions. Similarly, the deputation tonight, we haven't had time to actually digest it. So it's therefore premature to set the conditions for the ongoing conduct of the review and progress of this review before the decision makers are fully informed. Three, the proposed motions seek to set the future process of the review, whereas there are two motions from the the annual general meeting of electors on the 3rd of February, which seek to alter the current process and scope of the process. So there's a potential clash between these decisions tonight and the AGM decisions which are coming before the ordinary meeting of Council next month. And if a decision is made tonight on the process, the AGM decisions are effectively ignored or predetermined, or may require rescission or motion or change of decision in the future, which all requires resources and time. And the effective way of doing this in an orderly process is to defer this matter till the AGM motions are considered, and then move forward with the next step. It needs to be very clear that the community understands that AGM decisions are not being ignored or being predetermined, and there's no perception of that happening. And I therefore request that elected members support the deferral request, and we proceed forwards in a way that is quite transparent and clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are voting on the acceptance of petitions. We have a motion before us to defer that decision-making until May. So if you're in favour of deferring the acceptance of petitions till May, please vote green, and if you do not agree, vote red. No. Yes, Councillor Wheatland.
Just thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, just a question for clarity on what we're voting on. No, hang on. I'm talking.
No, she's
to the
asking
presiding
a
member,
question.
actually.
She's
Thank
not
you.
speaking. She needs clarity to make a decision.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And I understand and respect Councillor Ross's reason for deferral, but I don't actually see what it's going to achieve. So could you be a little bit more clearer, because it says in here, point 2, that the findings, in further investigations, and that the findings will be presented to council on what was raised in those motions at the AGM.
I think we've all read the officer's recommendations. I think we just need to make our view clear in the vote. So we're going to proceed to the vote. There is a deferral motion on the table. We're going to vote on that now. If you agree with deferring, accepting petitions, then you vote green or yes. And if you do not agree, you vote no, red. Thank you. Also, Councillor Barber, could you please let us know your vote? Are you voting for a deferral or not?
I agree with the deferral.
Thank you. Councillor Spanbrook, do you vote for a deferral or not?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that motion is lost for 9. Thank you. Now we're moving on to the next item. If the Oh, sorry. We're back to the officer's recommendation. We have a mover and seconder already, so we're going to vote on the officer's recommendation. Yes, Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you. Just a question to the officers, if I may, to Mr. Varelis. I just want to know. I had a call from a resident, a couple of residents quite a few residents actually, and today I spoke to a lady, and she raised a really good point that you know, it's part of the reason why people move to these suburbs in Ardross, in Burragoon, is proximity to schools, educations and institutions that they would like to raise their children at, etc., etc. And she raised the fact that has the city, she asked the question actually, not the fact, she asked the question, has the city taken into consideration any qualitative or quantitative data on families that live within these areas, and whether or not there'll be any appetite for them to move on when considering this density. And I hope that makes sense, because it made sense when I was writing it down. I did speak to Mr. Varelis today about it. So is that what I discussed with you today? So have you got some feedback on that question, please, so I can feed it back to the residents? Thanks.
Mr. Varelis, can you answer that now, or do you need to answer that later?
I'm happy to take that now through the chair.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Wheatland. The City has been engaging with the Department of Education on the impacts that the Local Planning Scheme 6 review would have on student attendance numbers, and that is a relevant consideration, and we'll continue that dialogue with the Department of Education, and we'll continue to share that information with council as the process progresses, and the residents, of course.
All right, thank you. Is there any debate on this matter? Yeah, Councillor Ross.
I wish to move an amendment to the motion.
What is your amendment?
My amendment would to place a new paragraph 2, which notes that the issues raised in the petitions are also the subject of 2 motions passed at the annual general meeting of electors on 3 February 2025, which are to be considered by Council at the OMC on the 18th of March 2025. New paragraph 3 notes that subject to the decisions made in relation to the AGM
Can you just go a little bit slower so the governance can...
I've got a copy here.
Oh, you have, okay, thank you.
New paragraph 3 notes that subject to the decisions made in relation to the AGM motions on 18 March 2025 or any later date, the scope and/or intent of proposed LPS 6 changes and further investigations may be varied in accordance with the AGM motion decisions. 4 would be just 2 amendments to the current paragraph 3, which says that and any, after the word petition in the first line, and any variances or additional investigations decided by the AGM motions will be the subject of further investigations, and that the findings will be presented to Council and the community by December 2025, and the rest is as per, and paragraph 1, of course, remains the same. I would ask if the mover and seconder would accept those amendments.
I need to see it on the screen
I think we need to read it first. We haven't quite got the whole motion up there yet, so let's wait till we've all read it. So this is a note at the bottom of the officer's recommendation. Am I correct in understanding that?
No, sorry, the officer's recommendation commences with paragraph 1, which is notes, and these are additional paragraphs within that. One remains the same. 2 will be replaced with the new paragraph 2. 3 will be a new paragraph, and current paragraph 2 will become paragraph 4 or point 4.
Sorry, it's been explained to me you're talking about petition 1. Is that correct?
Well, since all of them...
Use your microphone.
Since all of those decisions are identical, I wonder if it wouldn't be easier to just do them en bloc.
Do what on block? We're not quite certain what we're doing on block. So because you're saying you want to add that to petition 1, petition 2, petition 3, petition 4, petition 5,
yes,
is what I'm understanding.
Yes.
So rather than repeating that 5 times, you want to make a note saying that these points need to be added to each petition, yes, basically.
Yes. That'll make it easier, yes. Thanks, Mayor.
So what we're doing is point 1 stays the same. Point 2, because I can't see it here. A new point 2. So all the point 2s are out. Is that what we're saying? You're going to delete all point 2s? Oh, okay. We just don't have numbers on these, so I'm just not sure how the number's working. So we just got to wait for that. We're just going to need to get it up on the screen. Yeah, we just have to get this up on the screen so we've got more clarity. So point 1, and then we're adding all of this, and it's got numbers, but we don't have them yet. So that'd be number 2, I think. And the next one will be number 3. Are we correct in saying that? And then the next one will be number 4. And then number 2 becomes... Oh, number 2 becomes 4. Yeah. Okay, and that goes for every petition?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So is everybody clear on that? Because you need to be really clear when you're voting, what you are voting on. Has anybody got any questions?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I do.
Sorry, who's that? Is that Jennifer? Oh, you're very quiet.
Yes. Oh, you can't hear me.
Can you turn your mic up, or can you turn...
Yeah.
The volume is very low.
How about now? Is that a bit better?
No, not really.
No. Okay. I've got it all at peak, so maybe I'll just speak very loud. Is that better now?
Slightly.
Okay.
If you give us a moment, Jennifer, we're just seeing if we can fix it up
Sure.
from this end.
Thank you.
Can you speak now, please, Councillor Spanbrook?
Yes. Yes. Is that much better?
Yeah, it is
Is there an
better. Yes,
improvement?
I think we can hear you more clearly now. What
right,
was?
thank you.
Did you have a question?
I do. I'd just like an understanding with regard to this from perhaps the director, that one of the resolutions at the AGM was for the precinct structure plan for the investigation and process into the Bull Creek and Murdoch train stations, or the precinct structure plan. So in that motion alone, it also stipulates that it wants to be included in the local planning scheme. I'm just trying to get understanding here, because the precinct structure plan is very different to a planning scheme. So how will including the AGN motions in these petitions, when they're talking about two completely different things? So if the director can provide some clarity on that, because it appears to be conflating two issues that are very different. Thank you.
Now, at the moment, we don't have a seconder for this amendment. Do we now have a seconder, since there's clarity about what we're seconding or what we're going to discuss? Councillor Lee, you wish to second it? Okay, thank you. Now we need an answer for the question of Councillor Spanbrook. Mr Varellis, planning.
Through the chair, thank you. Thank you for your question, Councillor Spanbrook. The best way to explain is that precinct plans are detailed plans for a prescribed area, generally defined by an activity centre. Station precinct plans will also be defined by the land surrounding the station itself. Local Planning Scheme 6 review deals with the land in between centres. So precinct plans and activity centre plans deal with residential, mixed-use, retail and commercial land within prescribed centres or precincts. And the Local Planning Scheme 6 review deals with all land outside of centres and in between. The motions from the AGM deal with a number of issues, including the station precinct plans. And on review of the amendments pursued by Councillor Ross, there doesn't appear to be any issues in terms of implementing these resolutions based on the amendments and the time that we've had to review those amendments.
Okay, thank you.
So you're saying there's no conflict with the suggestion? I think, I'm not sure which motions, I don't have the AGM minutes with me, but the two motions passed at the AGM, which are to be considered at the OMC next month, are we talking about the one that is to do with the Murdoch precinct as well? Is that one of them? It is one of them. So I'm not certain if Councillor Spanbrook was alluding to that, but is that then going to put us in conflict with that area and the scheme? Is that what you answered, that there wouldn't be any conflict? Is that what your suggestion is?
Yep, that is correct.
Councillor, yeah, just if you wait a moment, Councillor Spanbrook, Mr Varellis will answer that.
Through the chair, I think there's two parts to the question. The first part's the difference between precinct plans, activity centre plans and the Local Planning Scheme 6 review, which I've made evident. And the second part is, will the precinct plan in particular motion from the AGM and the difference between Local Planning Scheme 6 review and precinct plans have an impact on the amendments that are proposed? And based on what we've reviewed and the limited time that we've had to review those amendments, there doesn't appear to be a conflict with that being able to be implemented.
Can we increase the size so it's easier to read, please?
Pardon? Councillor Edinger. Oh, yeah, can you make it larger? It's a little bit small. We probably don't... Yeah, that's better. Thank you. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. Is there any voice to the contrary for the amendment? Councillor Green.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. I understand under the meeting procedures, if the mover and seconder of the original motion agree to the amendment, then there is no need for a debate or discussion, and the matter goes straight to the vote.
No, that's not correct.
Well, that's the way it's been worked in the past.
Well, this is considered to be a major amendment, so I will not be asking the mover and seconder of the substantive motion to be adopting it. If it was a small change of a few words here and there, yes, but on this occasion, no. So we will be entering debate. Since you have opened the debate, does the seconder wish to speak now or later? Yes, does that mean you'll speak later? Yeah, okay. So, Councillor Green, do you wish to speak against? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just don't believe that this amendment is unnecessary. I think we will be considering the motions carried from the annual general meeting of electors, and we would also be noting the petitions as part of our normal process. So I don't see the point of this amendment. The second thing I'd like to say is that certainly with the wording as it is currently, I think this assumes that all of the issues raised in the petitions are covered by the motions carried at the annual general meeting of electors. I don't think that's correct. I think there's certain elements to the petitions that aren't encapsulated within those motions carried at the AGM, and therefore there's a broader discussion to be had beyond the two motions from the AGM, and therefore we need to stick to what would be more conventional process and consider the two separately. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take a speaker for. Okay, since there is no further speakers, Councillor Lee, you speaking now, or we're moving on? Councillor.
Could I seek some clarity on point 3,
yes,
please? I find it interesting. I'm struggling with notes that subject to the decision made in relation to the AGM motions. It's future dated on the 18th of March 2025. And then it goes on to say that further investigations may be varied in accordance with the AGM motions decision, which hasn't been made yet. So it just doesn't make sense to me. How can we make a decision on a decision that hasn't been made?
Madam Mayor, it should be AGEM motion. It's just got AGM motion.
May I answer that?
Yes, Councillor Ross.
Just an answer to that. At the moment, we're making a decision to progress the review on its current scope and intent. That's what we're doing. We're saying we'll continue on with the process and report back in December. The note 3 says that if there is any change coming out of the decisions to be made in the future, then it notes that those changes will be included. It's only providing a pathway to include any future decisions in this process. It's not making a decision that there will be any changes. It's just simply allowing for that to happen if it occurs.
Right, thank you. Now,
further question. Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Is another question?
Yeah, just on something that Councillor Ross just said. So this is just noting the petition's content. It's not talking about any process or anything like that.
It's providing a pathway to include anything coming out of those decisions in this process.
All right, is everybody clear? Okay, since there's no further speakers, I'll ask Councillor Ross to wrap up the debate.
Madam Mayor, I think I've indicated here, there are two motions out there that are of great value to the community. Those motions were passed 45 to nil. And as we can see from the number of people in the audience today, that there is continuing concern about the way this process is being conducted, and they want to have their input into the matter. And I think that's not an unreasonable request. So if we don't make these amendments, the motions that are being passed tonight or being asked to be passed tonight is continuing with the standard process, and it doesn't actually leave any scope for changes that may come about from the AGM motions.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Fitzgerald.
I hesitate to do this because I think that it is, the use of point of orders is sometimes inappropriate, but I just cannot sit by and listen to the suggestion that accepting a petition somehow locks us into some separate process in a way that precludes taking account of the information in the petition. This information simply has no basis, and I'm not sure that it's appropriate for an elected member to be making a suggestion that a vote in a certain way will lock us into an effect that it simply won't.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I respectfully disagree with Councillor Fitzgerald's interpretation of what I said. That is not what I said. What I've said is that each of the petitions need to be properly considered, and all this motion does is notes those petitions, but the motions that have been arising out of the annual general meeting there is a requirement for the council to give them proper consideration and not to make any decisions that would prevent that proper consideration from happening. And this is just making sure that there is transparency, there's openness, and proper consideration is given. We're moving forward on this matter.
Can I just ask for clarity on that, since there was a point of order raised? Can the head of governance clear up our responsibilities, our legal responsibilities in regard to the electors' AGM?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. So any decisions made at the annual general meeting of electors are required to be considered by the council at the next available meeting of the council. So it's not this meeting. Those motions are scheduled to be presented to the 18th of March, and the council is required to consider those motions made.
Okay, just some clarity on that. Yeah, Councillor Ross?
And that is my concern, Madam Mayor, that these preempt those decisions being considered. And all I'm saying is that this amendment allows for variations to be made. It creates a pathway. It's not prejudging anything. It's not saying that those decisions, that any particular decision should be made or followed. It's simply allowing variation if that is required. So I don't see why that is in any way detrimental to the process or does anything other than show that the council is doing its best to review this matter in a fair and open way. And I ask you, all of you, to vote in favour of this motion as amended, or this amendment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're voting on the amendment as described by Councillor Ross, the one that's before you. So if you agree with the amendment, vote green for yes. If you do not agree, vote red for no. Thank you. Councillor Barber, what would your vote be? Yes or no for the recommendation?
The amendment.
Pardon?
I'm happy to support the amendment.
So that's a yes. Councillor Spanbrook, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. The amendment is lost, 6-7. Thank you. We're now on the substantive motion. No commentary, please. We're now on the substantive motion. Just the AGM motions will be considered at the next meeting of council and will be given due consideration as is stated in point 2. So we're now voting on the substantive motion. So please vote green for yes and red for no.
Is there going to be no debate?
Oh, yes, we can have debate. Yes, does anybody wish to debate? Councillor Edinger, do you wish to debate? Anybody else? Okay. No, there's no voice to the contrary? No? No? Okay, if there's no voice to the contrary, I declare it carried. If the gallery wishes to leave, you are welcome to do so now, but please proceed out quietly. We're now moving on to the next item for this evening, which is C25-241, mid-year budget review. So we have the officer's recommendation. We need a mover and seconder. Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded. Councillor Edinger, any voice? Oh, now we need to discuss this. Is there anybody who wishes to debate this item? A question, Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you, and apologies. I just got a question about C25-241. Oh, no, the Capital Works Amendment, and specifically the SBS 06173 Winnicott Street Leach Highway funding. I think it was a black spot funding that we'd received for that intersection, and it says that the project has been withdrawn from the program due to inability to construct the proposed treatment to main roads WA specifications. I just wanted a little bit more information about that, please.
Who's going to? Oh. Mr. McCarthy, are you able to answer that?
Sorry, can I have that question again, please?
Councillor Wheatland.
So the mix in the Capital Works amendments, in the amendments to the Capital Works expenditure, and it's the Winnicott Street Leach Highway. I think it was black spot funding grant for $450,000, and the project has been withdrawn from the program due to inability to construct the proposed treatment to main roads WA specifications. I believe it's the left turn from Winnicott onto Leach Highway. It currently goes left and right near the footbridge, and I think there was a plan to just make it a left turn only. I just wondered, maybe you can talk to me about it after.
Okay, if it's not crucial to the motion, then perhaps they can talk to you after. Just take it on notice. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
yes, Councillor Edinger.
realise that I probably have a financial interest in this item, so I'm going to withdraw my seconding and I'm going to leave the room.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Okay, I need another seconder now. Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. We'll just wait for Councillor Edinger to leave. All right, thank you. Now, Councillor Fitzgerald, do you wish to open this debate? Well, first of all, is there any voice to the contrary?
I have a question. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You have a question, Councillor Spanbrook? Can I ask the two gentlemen at the back in the gallery, hello, in the gallery, the two gentlemen in the gallery, can you please have your conversation outside? It's quite loud. Thank you. Councillor Spanbrook, you have a question?
I do, thank you. It's regarding the $173,000 that have been, or they're not required in 24-25 financial year. Is that due to the 4-year delay that was requested or that has been granted to Centre Group?
Mr Tuffin, Finance.
Sorry,
Actually,
Councillor.
I forgot to mention library. Sorry about that, Director Tuffin. The $173,000 that is no longer required in the 24-25 financial year under the land and buildings being the Library and Cultural Centre. Is that no longer being required as a result of the 4-year delay of the Westfield project? Thanks.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Spanbrook. No, my understanding is that's just a reduction in required funds to see the plan design work in the current financial year.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm not sure what this one is probably for Mr McCarthy. One of the most significant variations that's noted in the mid-year financial review is a reduction in expenditure of $1.5 million that's associated with the change to the street lighting to move them all over to LED street lights. I note that that's a good news because the Synergy will be picking up the cost of, or Western Power will be picking up the cost of that. But I wonder, are there concerns that that will significantly alter the timeline? I note that this is a project that we've been trying to progress for some time now. I also note that achieving this project will have a very significant impact on the city's emissions. So I guess my question is, are we confident that with the funding control going to Synergy, we will still be seeing a timeline that's acceptable to the outcomes that we have thought about at the City of Melville?
Mr McCarthy, Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks for your question, Councillor Fitzgerald. So with the city's former proposal, which that funding was set aside for us to pay for the capital cost of the replacement through an accelerated program that was not supported by Western Power as part of their public lighting strategy. So we are now negotiating with them about what the rollout program is, and the funding that we've set aside for this year is an allocation that we feel is appropriate for supporting a Western Power funded rollout program, which, yes, would probably be over a longer period. So possibly we were looking at 2 financial years. It may be 3 or more financial years.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Green.
Yes, Madam Mayor, apologies for this. Just on item 3 regarding Karoonda Reserve Project, I think it's probably appropriate that I declare an impartiality interest in this case. I'll stay and vote. I think issuing of tenders is fine. If it was awarding of tenders, I'd probably leave the room and decline to vote. But in this case, just declaring an impartiality interest.
Thank you. Now, is there, Councillor Woodall, is that a question? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question, just in relation to point 5 of the officer recommendation. Could I just have confirmation that the fees and charges includes an introduction of a fee for the use of the EV chargers, which I think previously didn't have a fee, and I believe they were going to be included in this month's fees and charges schedule, noting that they need 30 days advertising before they take effect.
Mr McCarthy, Infrastructure and Environment.
So thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks for your question, Councillor Woodall. That's been addressed in the Statement of Financial Activity for December 2024, where those changes to the fees and charges have been specified.
Is there any debate on this item? If there's no voice to the contrary, I declare it carried. So we're on item C25. Oh, Councillor Edinger needs to return, so can somebody oh, she heard us. She's coming. Thank you. So we're moving on to item C25, 238, Statements of Financial Activity for December. I need a mover and seconder. Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Seconded, Councillor Wheatland. Is there any debate on this item? Any voice to the question? No? Any voice to the contrary? All right, I declare it carried. Item CD 2539, City of Melville Hall of Fame. I need a mover and seconder. Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Councillor Lee, do you want to be the other way?
Lee is, moving on.
Councillor Lee, the mover, and Councillor Fitzgerald seconding. Okay, so I think that there's probably some speakers for this, so I'll let Councillor Lee introduce this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I start the dialogue, can I ask the elected members, do we want something permanent for ourselves, something which will be bigger than will last longer than all of us here?
I think that's rhetorical, and
Yes.
you need to enter your debate. Thank you.
Yes. So I'm not going to talk about the details about how this policy is going to work, but I just want to throw in the bigger scheme, which is, we brought this up before with Ms. Pickering, civic pride. And one thing that we forgot with the workshop we did, vibrancy for the council. So indirectly, this Hall of Fame will aspire people to achieve. So it gives hope. And we know that a nation without hope will perish. So I'm using all this to bring back vibrancy, harmony, prosperity. So indirectly, this is linked to the tourism agenda. And the other area that I like to include is this carries on, and it will outlive all the elected members. So this is something that we can put our footprint on. Excuse the pun, if you're having a Walk of Fame. So this Hall of Fame that I put up actually inspires people to, residents, obviously is open to local residents, to see role models and make sure that they are achievers that have been rewarded. And also, I think Ms. Pickering was saying last week that it can be cross-promoted. A lot of winners have been awarded, but it's outside the council, and we can reward them as well through our own award. So this actually promotes a lot of co-sponsoring as well. Like if there's any events that's celebrating achievement, it can be opened up to the public. And at the same time, it produces a lot of vibes, positive vibes for people to feel proud to be part of the city. And in fact, this is actually a draw card for tourists as well. And if you look at, I'm not sure whether people have been to Port Augusta with the horse, Maccabee Diva, which won the Melbourne Cup 3 times in a row. And that was a draw card. I went specially to look at the horse, and it was at the foreshore. So the horse will last forever. And the whole city has been connected to that horse, and people go from far away to visit. So we can do the same And that leads nicely into being a movie-friendly city, which I think Ms. Pickering was going to allude to. So nothing concrete, but it's just to give the city officials a chance to report on how we should do it. I'm not going to go into the details, but generally is a good vibe for the residents to at least have some activities which will bring vibrancy back, which is part of our mantra when we did the workshop, vibrancy to the council again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Fitzgerald, do you wish to speak now or later? You'll speak now. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you in particular to Councillor Lee for not just bringing this motion forward, but your very consistent advocacy, both on the need for recognition of the excellent achievement of our residents, but also bringing a broader sense of community pride and cohesiveness about those achievements. Councillors, this motion has two parts. It has a boring and functional, but nevertheless very important part, and then it has the much more exciting part, which is the concept for the Hall of Fame. It's worth making a very brief point, however, about the less exciting part, and that is it's the development of a community award policy to give guidance regarding the management of our existing award programs. Having been involved in the sports grants for some years now, which recognises up-and-coming sports people in the City of Melville and gives us opportunities to give them memberships at our gyms, at Leisure Fit and these sorts of things. I think it's an excellent program. I have sometimes felt that we have to deal with some fairly rubbery rules, both in terms of eligibility, but also what do you do when you've got a very young person who is excellent and qualifies 3 years in a row. I think a clearer policy guidance is a very useful thing to make sure that when we're doing our work on these existing programs, that we all agree how it's going to work and we are all working towards the same goal. The second, much more exciting part is the concept for the Hall of Fame. And I know that Councillor Lee has said that he's not going to talk about the detail. I think, again, it's worth making one sort of overarching point. This is a motion to develop a policy, but the intention is, and I think we're all pretty clear on this, that the goal is to set out a policy which will ensure that we can recognise the outstanding achievement of residents or people with a clear link to the City of Melville. So if you are working at Fiona Stanley Hospital and you are engaged in research that is world leading, as indeed much of their research is, if you are studying at Murdoch University and you are engaged in dramatic world leading research there, if you are playing sport in the City of Melville, if you are any of these sorts of things, we want to make sure that where we have people whose achievements are outstanding and deserve recognition, whether they are residents, whether they live, whether they work, whether they study, potentially even whether they are horses in the City of Melville, we have the capacity to recognise that achievement and to celebrate it. And so, once again, I thank Councillor Lee for this motion. I think it fits a need and I'm very excited to see how it develops.
Thank you. Is there any voice to the contrary? Is there a speaker against? All right, it doesn't look like there's a speaker against, so I'm going to declare this carried. If there's no voice to the contrary, it is carried. Thank you very much. Well done. Moving on to item CD 2540, Financial Advocacy Priorities for the Advocacy Strategy. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Any movers or seconders? Can I have somebody at least? Yes, thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Seconded, Councillor Lee. Any voice to the contrary? I declare it carried. You do?
Madam Mayor, I have an amendment to make, just in one word there, please, if I may.
What is the word?
The officer recommendation. Because there are a lot of assumptions within this advocacy strategy, and it is for 4 years, even though 25 is an election year, so I'm assuming that we'll be running into then the next federal election, then of course 29, the next state election. So I would like to change the word adopt to that the council notes the financial priorities, because we can't really adopt something when there are too many assumptions attached to it. So
can I ask somebody about those words? The CEO, Ms Bowman, will respond. Ms Pickering will respond.
Thank you.
Community Services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. I'm perfectly comfortable with the alternate word note, unless the CEO has an alternate view.
Ms Bowman, CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook. I was just going to double check the policy which Council adopted in December regarding any wording regarding this particular financial advocacy strategy, whether or not the Council needs to adopt the strategy and the financial priorities. I just want to make sure we're not going against that Council policy. If we can just check that for one moment, please.
Thank you.
Councillor Woodall, is that a question?
Yes, a question.
Thank you.
I think one of the potential issues, or at least a concern that I had, was around the financial priorities in the strategy include things like the Library and Cultural Centre, and at the moment there's a question mark over which direction that's going to go in, what Westfield are going to do and when and so on. So I think it's just, I guess that may be where Councillor Spanbrook is coming from in terms of adopting something when we don't necessarily know that that will actually be a priority. That may change in 6 months' time or once the review is finished. So I think that was sort of one of the issues potentially.
Just another point, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you. It's also with regard to the amounts that are being asked of federal and state government. So it's hard to adopt something when we're only making assumptions. So therefore, I would have thought the appropriate word would be we will note it, and then of course if anything does drop and there is grant funding, well then of course that's good news for us. But to adopt something, it's as I said, we're only assuming on the information that's already been put to us. Thanks.
Okay, this is sounding a lot like a debate. So, look, did we find out what the wording was that we were looking for? Has somebody found it?
Yep.
Ms Pickering, you found it?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The wording in the policy does say, and it's under section 2, establishing the advocacy policy. Point H, the advocacy strategy is endorsed by Council.
So we should endorse it then, is really the word to be used. Look, I did declare that too early because I couldn't see the people online, so I have opened this up again. So the word endorsed, is that a word acceptable to the mover and seconder? Pardon? Oh, you don't have a seconder. All right, Councillor Fitzgerald, you're the mover. And the seconder, I thought we had a seconder. Councillor Lee. Yeah, so Councillor Lee. Yeah. Oh, is that what you're talking about? Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Spanbrook, I'm taking it that you're moving the word change to endorsed. So the word adopts is changed to endorsed. Is that what you're stating?
Actually, it can be endorsed because endorsed can also mean to support.
Exactly. And that's
so other than adopt. Yep.
Yes. Okay. Do you have a seconder? Seconder. Councillor Edinger. Is there any voice to the contrary? I declare that. Oh, hang on. There is. Councillor Woodall.
I just wanted some clarity on the Library and Cultural Centre being included in there when that may potentially change in the next few months. Can the strategy then be changed very easily? Like, is it a moving document rather than just a fixed piece for the next 4 years? Because that's my concern, is that I don't want to lock ourselves into supporting things that may be impacted by things that we can't control.
CEO, Ms Bowman. No, Ms Pickering's going to answer that one. Thank you. Community Development.
Thank you, and through you again, Madam Mayor, thank you for the question, Councillor Woodall. In the policy, we do note that the strategy is we have the option to return it to Council annually for reconsideration. There's also a clause in there that notes that we'll regularly monitor advocacy progress and make adjustments as necessary to capitalise on emerging opportunities or address obstacles.
Madam Mayor, I would like to add to that, please, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Spanbrook, are you wrapping up the debate? Or are you just...
Well, it's just, I'm actually just perhaps that with Councillor Woodall's concerns, which I do share, perhaps the Library and Cultural Centre can actually have a notation attached to it, which is similar, like the notation as attached to number 9, the Adelaide Opera Cove foreshore program, as there is a notation attached to that. So maybe the Library and Cultural Centre does need, a notation, not exactly that one, but something similar.
Yeah, okay. Well, we've already got an amendment on the table from you. Councillor Wheatland, you have a question?
Yeah, seeing the discussion centred around the Library and Cultural Centre, this is a decision of council for the Library and Cultural Centre, and it's already been decided. So if something does happen in the future, this is a question to the officers, if something does happen in the future that, that prohibits it from moving forward, then it would surely come back to council for a decision to be made, and then that adjustment could be made to the advocacy policy.
Ms Bowman, CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your question. And so there's already been a council decision to specifically advocate for the Library and Cultural Centre. And if there was something that was to change regarding that particular project and we're unable to implement that decision, then we would need to come back to council for consideration. And at this stage, we're still progressing with that. We'll give updates to elected members regarding that particular project at an elected member engagement session when we've got more information. But we already have a council decision and we will come back to council if we have an issue with being able to implement that. Thank you.
All right, let's go back. Yes, Councillor Wheatland, is that another question?
Sorry, another question, just in relation to the order of the advocacy items. I note that I can't look it up now because my computer's restarted for some reason. The financial assistance grants is down at number 3 or 4, I think, is it? Sorry? What's further down the list? Financial assistance grants, I think that's a key priority, number 5. Is that like in sequential order or is it just a list?
Ms Bowman, CEO.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. It's not in sequential order. It's really just identifying all of the projects that we're currently proposing to advocate for. Thank you.
Right. Okay, so let's go back to the amendment. Is the mover and seconder happy to change the word adopt to endorsed? The mover is the seconder happy to adopt that word? Yes? Okay, so now that's become part of the substantive motion. Is there any voice to the contrary to the substantive motion? If there's no voice to the contrary, I declare it carried. Thank you. Now we're moving on to notice of motion 15.1, paper cheques. The motion is moved by Councillor Edinger. Councillor Edinger, do you wish to proceed with your motion?
I do.
Okay. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Wheatland is seconding. Councillor Spanbrook, you have your hand up. Is that in relation to this item?
No.
No, it's not. Okay, thank you. So we've got a mover and seconder. So Councillor Edinger, do you wish to speak now?
Yes, I do. Thank you. As I state in the reasons for the motions, cheques are rapidly being phased out and now account for less than 0.2% of the total volume of payments, which is a very small number. The city issued last year, I think, less than 100 cheques or around 100 cheques, which is not very many cheques. But when I sent an email to ask if cheques could stop being made. That one of the reasons to continue issuing cheques was that the cheques, because they often go to the aged care support people, potentially provide the aged people with a social opportunity when they go to the bank to deposit the cheques. But given that the aged care grants are accessed through the Smarty Grants platform, which is an amazing platform, they or someone has helped them to access the grant, and if they're technologically savvy, they'll probably deposit the cheque through their phone, which is how I've done the last few cheques that I've got. So they'll be at home, they won't be going to the bank. No one has a relationship with their teller these days. You used to, but you don't now. So I just think the social opportunities for a very small, minute portion of our community versus the productivity gains for the city are well worth voting for this motion. One of the stated city's objectives is to have better business practices, and so I think that supports it as well. So I think that's all I've got to say. I think it'll change people's lives. Thank you.
Councillor Wheatland, do you wish to speak now or later?
I'll speak now. I'll just say that I support the reasoning behind Councillor Edinger's motion, and that we need to move forward and move into the digital age. So I support this motion.
Look, I'd like to ask two questions. The first one is, why are we issuing these cheques and not having money deposited in accounts, as has been suggested by the mover of the motion? Is that Ms. Pickering? Mr. Tuffin. I thought it was Ms. Pickering. Sorry. Ms. Pickering.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The reason we provide the option on these particular grants because they are targeted to our elderly community, and we know from that community that they prefer, a lot of them prefer to receive a cheque. So it's an option that they can choose. And so we only provide the cheques to those that have actually selected that as an option on the form.
Can perhaps Mr. Tuffin tell us when cheques are going to be ruled out eventually by the state or federal government?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the federal government has a program, a cheque transition plan, which is to be introduced to cease issuing cheques by 30th of June 2028, and then allowing time, I believe, up to about the 30th of September 2029 for those cheques to be presented. So there is a program, and I understand that the city would work to those timeframes in terms of providing assistance to transition from cheques to EFT.
So that's 3 years away. Yes, thank you.
Correct.
Councillor Woodall.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, could I please move an amendment?
Yes, what is your amendment?
So, and I apologise, Councillor Edinger, because I do support the intent of the motion, but I would just like to add, at the end of it, I'd just like to add or 30 June 2028, so that the report looks at both options. So ending it by 30 June this year versus ending it in line with the federal government date for ending it.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Fitzgerald. Do you wish to speak further to that amendment?
Yes, thank you. Just very briefly, I agree with Councillor Edinger that we need to phase out cheques, and there's a dwindling number of cheques being issued, and it's probably not an efficient payment method in this day and age. My only concern is trying to sort of fast track it, I guess, earlier than the federal government. I'm just concerned there might be sort of two separate processes, and whether it would be easier for the sake of 3 years to simply roll all that into one, so that, you know, the education campaign for those people who still rely on them can all occur at once, rather than potentially lead to confusion. But yeah, because this motion is just calling for a report, I think it's sufficient for the report to look at both options and the pros and cons with each of them.
Just a question. What age group would be requesting cheques? Is there a particular age group that might be doing that? Ms Pickering, would you have that answer?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a quantitative figure, but anecdotally it's the over 75-year-olds.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any voice, Councillor Edinger, is that a question or
Can I
debate?
ask a question?
Pardon? Oh, Councillor Barber, you have a question?
Councillor Barber, yeah, would that be okay, Madam? Just a quick one. I can't remember seeing it in the literature, but do we still get residents paying us by cheques?
Mr Tuffin, would you have a response to that?
I'd have to take that on notice, Madam Mayor. I understand we probably do get a handful of cheques, but majority would be EFT payments. But I'd need to take that on notice.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any speaker against the amendment? Okay, Councillor Edinger.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Councillor Woodall, I'm very much disinclined to support your amendment. I don't think having two different dates is helpful. You also mentioned security of payment, or was to that effect, and I have to say that sending a cheque out in the mail is the least secure form of payment other than cash. And I have personal experience of having a cheque deposited by someone else and never getting the money back because it was gone. So I think the more we can do to streamline payments and make sure that they're secure, the better. And this is part of the reason why I put the motion forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a speaker for? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you. And I support Councillor Woodall's amendment because I think it gets us to the central question we need to answer, which is, do we want to go out in front of the federal government or not? And I think posing the question of the report that way will sharpen the mind. The reality is we issued 39 cheques last year. We've issued 26 this year. They are all, as I understand it, linked to the Age-Friendly Melville Fund. Incidentally, the Age-Friendly Melville Fund does allow paper copies. So there are actually physical, if you go down to the Willogy or the some of our libraries, you can pick up a physical copy of that and you can fill it out by hand and you can hand it in. So there are no doubt applications still coming in that way, and I would suggest that the number of applications coming in that way and the number of applications that we're paying by cheque are probably that Venn diagram is a circle. There will need to be some education, and my strong suspicion is that it will be preferable for the federal government to undertake that education for those who need it rather than us. But I'm happy to take the officer's report on what this change will look like, so long as we're appreciating that this is coming and we're, in a sense, jumping the gun.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Councillor Woodall, do you wish to wrap up the debate?
I'm happy to go to the vote.
All right, so the amendment moved by Councillor Woodall is at the end of the motion. We add it's versus, sorry, I didn't get the, what does it say? Or 30 June 2028. It's in front of you. So just adding those few words at the end. So do we have, if you agree with the recommendation, you vote green for yes, and if you're against it, you vote red for no. So we've got that vote on the screen now. Oh, Councillor Barber, what is your vote? Do you vote for the recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, yes. And Councillor Spanbrook, for or against?
I support the amendment. Thank you.
That's carried 11-2. Now we're back to the substantive motion. Now, does anyone wish to speak against the substantive motion? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In line with what some of the other speakers have said, I think that we should let the federal government undertake the work associated with educating the public that the phasing out of cheques is going to happen in 2029, and I think that we should follow that same timeline. I would rather that our officers don't spend time writing a report on this. I think it's preferable that we make the decision here this evening to not proceed with this option. Mr. Tuffin indicated last week that there's not a significant resourcing burden in terms of cost or time associated with issuing cheques. And so I think taking that into account, it's better that we just let the federal government introduce the phasing out of cheques in 2029. I think that, it's only a small group of people, which has been acknowledged, but I would hate to cause undue anxiety or stress for people who have always used cheques. That's the way they operate. That's what they're comfortable with. It is probably an older demographic, and I just don't think that we need to be putting them through that anxiety or stress unnecessarily. And just in terms of the social aspect and the relationship with the teller, my mother-in-law is a bank teller and she's always telling us stories about her regular customers that come in that she chats with week to week. So I'd hate to take that away from people. Thank you.
Okay, is there a speaker for? All right, Councillor Wheatland, you've spoken. So Councillor Edinger, can you wrap up the debate, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, Mr. Tuffin also said there's a lot of checks in the strong room, so I'd like to, not really, but amend the motion so that we start to receive our monthly stipend via cheque. And yeah, I think that's a great idea. What do you think? No? Yes? I would guarantee that the people who are receiving these cheques, which is a very small minority, receive their Medicare rebate by EFT, receive their pension by EFT, receive their dividends from their shareholdings or from their superannuation by EFT, and their allocated pension by EFT. You're shaking your head, no? Happy to be educated.
I'm aware of people that receive dividends by cheque.
Oh, okay.
BHP still pay dividends.
Some people receive their dividends by cheque. My God. Okay. The business I work in, everything is by EFT. So sorry for wanting, security of payment and ease of payment to be a goal in business. So I do ask you, though, to support this motion and make me a happy lady. Thank you.
Okay, so if you are in favour, you're going to vote yes, green, and if you are against this motion, you're going to vote red, no. Councillor Barber, what is your vote? Are you for Councillor Edinger's motion, amended?
Councillor Robbins put up a really good argument, actually, but I will vote for the motion.
Okay, so for the motion. And Councillor Spanbrook?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just on what Councillor Edinger said, I would love to get a cheque. I think digital was more dangerous than what it needs to be. So in saying that, I do not support the motion. Thank you.
Right, thank you. The motion is lost 6-7. All right, thank you. Now, motions without previous notice, item 16. There are no motions without previous notice for this evening. So item 17, matters for which the meeting was... Oh, hang on, we haven't closed the meeting at all. Okay, we're moving on to confidential items. So we need a motion to go behind closed doors. Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. Seconded, Councillor Lee. Is there any voice to the contrary? I declare it carried. We just need a few minutes to turn off the live streaming and then we can continue with these two items. Oh, they didn't freeze us to death after all. No. Okay. All right, ready to go. 18, decisions made while meeting was closed to the public. For the purposes of the minutes, I advise the following items were discussed behind closed doors. E2560, confidential, purchase of electricity for City of Melville contestable sites, another officer recommendation, and the officer recommendation was carried unanimously. And C25242, confidential staffing matter, and the officer recommendation was carried unanimously. So up to 19, closure. For the purpose of the minutes, can the following councillors please confirm they're still in attendance electronically? Councillor Barber?
Yes, I am still in attendance.
Thank you. Councillor Spanbrook?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am still here.
Okay, thank you very much. There being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 8:27.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, good night. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.